Greetings. Welcome to ITR Live. I'm your host, Chris Hagan. We are back here in Studio 130 for another fun-filled, action-packed episode of the Gold Standard in Iowa Conservative Podcasts. We have John Hendrickson and myself here today. How are you doing, John?
I'm doing fine.
You know, I've asked you that before we actually come on air, but I feel like it's a good icebreaker for me to ask you how you're doing. Like, I don't want our listeners to think that you and I work together and I don't ask you how you're doing throughout the day. And here we are in the middle of the afternoon, and I'm just now but yes, for our listeners, John's doing well.
Yep.
Okay, good. John's doing really well because he got some new what do we call it? Memorabilia, merchandise, new good John stuff in the mail. And so I think just to kick things off, I want you to share with the folks your latest acquisition.
Yeah, I'm excited about this piece. And it's what camera?
Right over there. Camera 2, John.
This is an old sheet music from 1893, and it's called Protective Tariff Grand March. And the composer, William L. Thompson, also did one called, I believe it was the Free Trade March, because 1893, that was one of the big issues at that time being debated, is should we have free trade or a protective tariff? And this was actually done for the a company in Ohio. And so, this a lot of times music like this was very popular, and even political campaigns would have their own songs and have music written to them. And so this is was an exciting piece because as you know, I'm pretty interested in the trade issue. And
you're pretty fond of tariffs too.
Yes, I am. Yeah. It is and it was, interesting enough, the Republican Party for a long time had been the party of protection.
Yeah. No, we've talked about that. Yeah. I just think it's great. I like the style of the front cover.
Yeah, it's really neat, the way they designed it.
Yeah. So I guess where my mind went is, should we get a grand march for income tax elimination?
I think so. It'd be fun.
All right. Yeah. Well, if any of our listeners are composers of this kind of music, have arranged for full concert bands, please reach out to us, and maybe we could commission the income tax elimination grand march. We
need the John Williams of music policy to.
Well, maybe we'll just Google John Williams himself. I wonder if we could afford him. I doubt it. Didn't he pass away?
He might have.
Oh, okay. Well,
but
anyway,
he conducted a lot of the best scores on soundtracks.
Yeah. No, it's great. So the Protective Tariff Grand March. Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe
I couldn't pass it up.
Yeah. No, you can't. You got to do that.
Yeah.
Okay. A bit of on to some of the things we probably ought to work on here, John. Well, we should work on the Protective Tariff Grand March. We're not going to go over the Super Bowl. I told the listeners that if the Chiefs won, we would, but I'm not.
Yeah.
But there's something that is a little more policy related that I've just got to. You heard me kind of get frustrated with this, but so in the past, the president would have an interview on Super Bowl Sunday, but they didn't do that. They had a video. But this is President Biden from his tweet on Super Bowl Sunday. While you were Super Bowl shopping, did you notice smaller than usual products where the price stays the same? Folks are calling it shrinkflation, and it means companies are giving you less for every dollar you spend. I'm calling on the big consumer brands to put a stop to it. I don't even know where to start with this, John. Help me out, because maybe I just need to warm up to my rant on this. But just okay, go ahead, see what you got.
It's interesting that he would put out a tweet like that because, in a sense, the inflation problem started under his watch with massive stimulus spending. One impact of inflation is not just high prices, but businesses do this. They can either raise prices or repackage things and make it smaller, or do both actually. Mm-hmm. And it's for someone whose economic policies have, really hurt the consumer in the last several years. It's kind of interesting that he would take this approach and criticize businesses for doing that.
Maybe we should finally thank the president for waking up to what he's done to the American economy. Now, I think there's more to it than the amount of chips you get in your snack food on Super Bowl Sunday. But you're exactly right. This is Bidenomics, folks.
Yes, yeah.
So you can raise prices, you can reduce what you're paying out. This is an absolutely normal, predictable response to the extreme inflation that we've seen in our economy.
Yeah.
So before you go shaming the companies that produce these products, let's take a look at what led to this, right?
That's absolutely right.
Now, but what this also just reeks of a command economy and price controls too.
Yeah.
I don't need the president of the United States trying to tell individual actors in the economy what they can charge for their goods and services or what goods and services they will have to provide at a given price point.
Yeah.
You know, if the price of Doritos goes up 50 cents a bag, am I going to have the president coming in and getting mad at Frito-Lay for charging more for the Doritos? I'll pay it.
Yeah.
I will. But come on.
Yeah.
This is just, and then ultimately, it's just small ball. This is, I mean, after 3 years of the Biden administration and their complete reign of terror on the American economy, heading into a re-election when a president that can't face live television, their economic plan to try and score a cheap political point is to talk about the price of snack food.
Yeah.
Give me a break.
Yeah.
Wake up, realize what you've done, and try and come up with at least some sort of understanding of what you've done to the economy and a real grown-up plan to address it.
That's right. Yeah, and you know, this is what the sad part is this is all that they have. I mean, this is the best they can do because they can't really campaign on anything else. And you know, the same thing was immigration. I mean, they're trying to pass the blame on that.
I will wrap it up with this because we are going to have a lot to say about the presidential race and the Biden record on any number of things.
Yes,
but you are absolutely right. What is it that they want to run on? Is that they want to run on the economy? The American people are completely done with Joe Biden's administration of the American economy or what he's done with inflation and everything else. They are real frustrated with foreign policy, with immigration, with our national defense, with any number of things. Over and over, we've seen at best inaction on these issues. So if this is what they are left to is to argue snack food with the American people, then you know what? Then they should go ahead and do that.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, we'll go ahead and talk about issues that actually matter to Americans.
Can I throw a question to you that's off the cuff?
Okay. It's not usually how this works,
yes,
John.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
If I read the story right, I just saw the headline mainly. But it sounded like they were sending Vice President Harris to give a speech before NATO. Do you think this is signaling something to preparing for her to maybe?
I think many Americans had forgotten that we had a vice president because they've had her locked away someplace. You used to see a lot of the vice president. Now you don't see anything.
No,
That's our border czar, by the way.
That's right. Yeah.
Border czar.
Yeah.
Kamala Harris.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That just surprised me when I saw that.
I think
that
there is, and it's probably a little bit more reasonable than conspiracy theory stuff, but it almost looks like they're setting up the president to continue to fail to try and push him out.
Yes.
But the other part is I just can't quite get there that the Democrat Party insiders, the establishment, who really at the end of the day, and this cuts both ways, this goes through, really just want to hold on to power, really think their best chance is Kamala Harris.
Yeah.
But that goes, the Democrat bench is in rough
Yeah.
shape anyway, so maybe that is the best they got. I don't know.
The other funny thing, going back to the shrinkflation, is these are the same people in the Obama administration that were all attacking obesity and wanting you to eat vegetables and
I thought we were supposed to eat less snack food.
Yeah, Michelle Obama's Let's Move campaign, and so I mean.
Okay, we'll get back to the Michelle Obama stuff on another day, John.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Anyway. Okay. Okay, we need to move on again, John, because I do want to spend some time on a few things here in Iowa. So a couple of more housekeeping items. We talked about the ITR Foundation poll that's coming up. So that is, we really hope it's going to be released by the end of the week. I don't want to make too many promises, but it's looking like we may have that ready. There's going to be some good policy information in there. Also, we talked about ITR NFIB Tax Day that's coming up on March 20th. And we are going to have a really exciting speaker coming for that we've confirmed. So we'll be able to release that and our invitation to all the listeners for that. But that's coming up on March 20th over the lunch hour here in Des Moines. So circle your calendars for that. Okay, it is funnel week in the legislature. So this is the week that you got to pass the bill out of committee. The maybe not so highly publicized secrets. Nothing's ever really dead.
Yeah.
Until we're done in the legislature. If they really want to, they can bring back any idea they want. But it is a good chance to sort of kind of winnow down the list of bills. So we'll come back after this week and kind of go over what survived and didn't. But there are some new bills that have come out that I think we need to spend some time on. And these are just very recently released, but there was an election bill.
Yes. Yep.
And every year or two, you usually see an election bill at the legislature. But this one that you and I spent some time on talking about earlier, but had a proposal on ranked choice voting. Mm-hmm. Tell us about that.
Yeah, this is very important, I think. And for listeners who may not be familiar with ranked choice voting, this is a movement that's become national. In fact, there's some states that have it and some states that are actually abolishing it, and that's what this bill would do if it passes. But what ranked choice voting is it basically is a very complicated system of holding elections. So, let's just say there's 4 candidates for mayor, and ranked choice voting basically would say you would rank your choices, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then it goes through a complex process where it narrows those down based on the percentages of who votes or ranks, who gets a higher ranking. And that's very problematic because, one, it's very confusing, but also let's just say I only want to vote for 2 people because I don't like the other ones.
Right. If
my 2 candidates don't make the cut, my ballot gets thrown away. Mm-hmm. And so it doesn't count. And so that it brings up some serious fairness questions. Yeah. And what you see in all kinds of states right now is the extreme left is pushing ranked choice voting, just like they're pushing to undermine the Electoral College by the national popular vote. And so I think the Iowa Senate has done a great job in sort of doing these important election reforms, and because this is it's a dangerous idea.
It's a gimmick to try and get fringe candidates or far left candidates elected.
Yes.
In places.
And I think just think of how confusing what was the last Iowa Democratic Caucus? That was 20.
It would have been in 20.
Yeah, that was such a disaster. Yep. I mean, that's kind of what ranked choice voting would become.
It's one person, one vote. Pick your candidate, vote for him.
Yeah,
and maybe even I feel strongly about ranked choice voting is a bad idea, but we want to encourage confidence in the system. And that's what's underlying a lot of these election bills.
Yeah.
And when you make it more complicated, there's more opportunities for error, there's more opportunities for fraud, and there's a greater chance that the American people or the Iowa or whoever lose confidence in the system because look, we spent a lot of time trying to explain the property tax system to Iowans.
Yes, yeah.
Because it's complicated and it's hard to understand. Why would we want an electoral system that's complicated and hard to understand, or make it more complicated?
Yeah.
So, I think it's a bad idea. We need one person, one vote, paper ballot with a paper trail. Let's go.
That's right.
That's it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, very good. And then inside of that, I believe drop boxes, further restriction on drop boxes was in there.
Yes. Yep.
And then I think some other more technical.
Some tightening of absentee.
Well, that bill, that's one
Ballots,
to watch.
yeah.
That's one to watch moving forward. I suspect that something will happen on that bill. The governor released her boards and commissions bill.
Yes, yeah.
Anything stand out to you on that?
No, this is basically, and we've talked about this, if folks remember that over the summer you had a special boards and commissions committee that evaluated all.
Highly publicized.
Yes, several public hearings, and they evaluated all 256 boards and commissions. And so they recommended that they would either eliminate or consolidate 111. And so that's what this bill would do. And so if that's done, it would be a 43% reduction in our boards and commissions. And the other thing does is it adds a sort of an extra layer of transparency. So every year, I believe, there's a certain percentage of these boards and commissions that have to be reviewed again, which is a good idea. So this is part of the larger continuation of the governor's streamlining state government initiative, and I think it's actually a good reform.
Yep, I agree. I think that's good. So one bill that there's a subcommittee on today, and this is really inside baseball stuff. So stick with me, folks. But right of first refusal, which has to do with electric transmission on our power grid. The issue itself isn't really what I care a lot about. Leave that up to the industry to fight. But this is the issue that gave rise to the conflict between the legislature and the Supreme Court when they struck down the earlier version of this for having been added to a budget bill in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
And it had to do with Justice Waterman quoting floor debate in his decision. And really, and I remember going on a rant at the time, John. I think you remember about the court just going a little too far.
That's right.
In sticking its hands into the function of a separate branch of government. Well, so the whole idea was that you shouldn't have passed this legislature because this was just an amendment in the middle of the night, and it shouldn't work that way because you never would have been able to pass it on your own, right? Which is actually the same thing they said about the fetal heartbeat bill too.
Yes, yeah.
And what did they do? They called a special session and ran the fetal heartbeat bill, and that is still in front of the court. Well, here's the other one, which is the law that gave rise to it all. Now they're just going to run it as a standalone bill.
Yeah.
So let's go. I will say this. I take no position, at least as far as us in the organization, on the issue itself, but it is a very important thing for the legislature to stand its ground, to protect its authority as a minimum, a separate and independent branch of government, definitely separate from the Supreme Court. And I don't use the separate but equal. I believe that the legislature ultimately is the primary source of political authority in our system of government, not our Supreme Court.
Yeah.
So
that's why separation of powers is so important.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Actually, my fifth grader's actually going through a lot of this, so we got to talk about that, and she had a little choice, and it was what is a republic, what is the Senate, what is the Supreme Court, and all these different things, and things that I learned on Schoolhouse Rock. But she's picked up quite a bit of it just from being around me. But it was fun to kind of go through that with her. Okay. That's kind of it on some of the stuff that we hadn't really talked about. Anything else that you're noticing moving through? Some of the regulatory reform bills, those continue to move.
Regulatory reform continues. There's really no movement on the tax front yet, so that will be in the coming weeks.
Well, and I've said this before, that the tax policy usually happens later in the legislative session. That's conventionally where it happens. Now, obviously, when we had the 2021 reform, that was done early and for a number of reasons, but I think that was first or second week of February even.
Yes, yeah.
Because the governor had that in her State of the Union response.
Yes, yep, that's right.
Usually you get through the funnels, the appropriations process has continued to move, and you get a little clearer sense of how much money do we have and how much can we attribute to tax policy. So I expect that conversation will pick up more after this funnel, and even especially after the second funnel in the appropriations process moves along. Another thing that I think has been talked about in the news is the setting of supplemental state aid. So this is funding to public K-12 schools, which is by law to be set in the first 30 days of session. But since the legislature writes the laws, they kind of can do it whenever they want to. Yeah. And there's still a lot of moving parts. There was, frankly, they don't have an agreement on how much to spend. The governor's teacher pay plan, which probably needs to be addressed inside the conversation of supplemental state aid. And then the AEA reform, which those bills seem to be dead, but that conversation goes on. So there's a lot of pieces inside of public K-12 education funding that I think are spilling over into that. I know that the left loves to look. Both sides do it. If Democrats were late doing it, they're in control. Republicans would criticize them, and vice versa. Our schools will be just fine. Yes, they're going to get the money. They know they're going to get the money. So just everyone sit tight, and they'll work it out. I'm not worried about that, and they'll go through that. So that's coming as well.
That's the biggest chunk of the budget.
It is.
Yeah,
it is. Education, which is over 50% of the state budget goes to public K-12 education, which is K-12 education in general, and regions funding, community colleges, and all that stuff, and then healthcare being a very big part of what's left.
Yes,
those two alone take up a huge chunk of it. And we, John, we're going to continue to watch the appropriations process as well, because it's very important as we hold the line on spending to continue to be able to afford the tax cuts that we've already done, and the ones that we're going to do in the future. And we've said over and over that the difference between Iowa and other states is that we're holding the line on spending while we're cutting taxes. So
I was reading an article over lunch about because the Minnesota legislature convened this week, and the DFL was saying, well, we're going to kind of not be as aggressive as last year because they're looking at a budget crisis. Because they spent the most in state history and raised taxes, and now they're going to face the consequences.
Yeah, it is. It is amazing that when you spend every dollar you get, it becomes hard to continue to fund that over time.
Yes,
but it's a lesson they haven't learned up north, and they're going to pay the price for it.
Yeah.
And so, well, good. Well, we're going to have more of a recap of all those things later on, but that's some of the new bills that have come up this week, and there's still a lot of stuff. There's a long ways to go in this legislative session, and we're gonna stay on it. So, anything else today, John? This is where you usually come up with a brand new topic that we hadn't discussed.
Yeah,
so we spend another 5 minutes going. Yeah. Anything else today, John?
Nope.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, you're gonna get out. We'll dismiss early today, then, everyone. So, thanks, John. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. Don't forget to like and subscribe. If you're on audio, don't forget to check us out on YouTube or Rumble and give us a positive review. And with all of that, we will see you next time on ITR Live.